Oh my god.
God, my oh.
Insects of YouTube. It's Madam Noise from Madam Noise, and joining me, as with the previous video, is my good friend, Super DM64, aka Dylan McCandlays, or the other way around. I'm too tired to really give a fuck at this point. Say hi, Super DM.
I'm known as something to those who know me.
Exactly.
One way or another. But yes, it is a pleasure to be here again in this series of Daimajin reviews.
And we hyped this up. Wow, that peaked really bad. Well, we hyped this up quite a bit in the previous video for a review of the 1966 film Daimajin. And today we're going to be talking about its sequel, also released in 1966, called Return of Daimajin. So, Dylan, let's start with you. What are your overall thoughts of this great film?
Well, I wanted to rewatch it again before doing this video, but unfortunately I did not get the chance because it has been a while since we recorded the first one. But from what I can remember, I liked it a lot. I mean, it's obviously less original because the plot is very derivative of the plot of the previous film, so it doesn't have as much of an originality factor. The villain isn't as awesome, but how can you beat Samanosuke?
I know, how the hell can you beat Samanosuke? And actually, I have a lot to say about the villain in this. In terms of the two villains,
however, the place that this entry in the series really shines is that this has the best action. Oh my god, the effects in this movie blew me away, I should say. Absolutely fantastic effects. I mean, the scene, and I'm sure we'll gush over this more later on, but the scene with the water, man.
Oh my god.
Where shit just goes Old Testament. It's fantastic. So I mean, yeah, I loved this movie overall for that reason alone. Just the effects were wonderful, and even though the story is less original because it's pretty derivative of the story of the previous film, you know, it's different enough to be fresh, and it's done well. I think, you know, it's executed pretty well, and the actors again in this movie are likable. So it's a fun watch. It's a fun watch.
I will definitely agree with you on the fact that this is a very fun watch. However, this is definitely my least favorite one out of the trilogy. And the main reason is I don't like the plot in this movie that much at all. And it's so funny because of how similar it is to the first Daimajin film. However, what made the first Daimajin likable is that the characters were cool. You know, you kind of, or at least a majority of the characters were cool. Of course, there are some misses in that film, but, you know, you liked the characters. In this one, I can't say I liked the characters very much at all.
I mean, one good thing that I can say about it, the prince in this movie, the good prince, is not as useless as the one from the first movie.
Well, yeah, he knows his shit, but there's only one character in this film that I can say that I really like. Technically two. One is, of course, Daimajin.
Yes, of course.
And the other one is the person that protects the princess on that island, that kind of chubby guy. I liked him a lot because I felt like he legitimately cared for the princess and stuff like that. When he bites the dust, I felt legitimately really bad for him, and he was the only character that I actually found myself caring for. But what really makes me come back to this film over and over again, and of course people like Kaiju Noir would absolutely kill us in this case, is the fact that the visual effects are so damn good.
Fantastic. The spectacle in this movie, they really amped it up from the previous installment. I mean, we bragged a lot about how the last movie was just beautiful to look at, but in this, they do everything with the same level of technical brilliance, but they just amp it up, like on every level. They're just firing on all cylinders, and it's fantastic.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Exactly. I mean, first off, it's not even just Daimajin scenes. There's a couple of scenes that the first time I watched this, I didn't even recognize that they were blue screen scenes until I watched it this time close up. And some of those are just characters standing out by the lakeside and stuff like that, and I was like, holy shit, this film was full of visual effects, not just in terms of the Daimajin sequences themselves. This is a lot of effects in them, and I really appreciate it for that, and there's a lot of match cutting between a real-life outdoor kind of lake sequence, then immediately it cuts to a set sequence. For example, the scene where the villains blow up the Daimajin statue, which first off, they don't just put a nail in the fucking head, they fucking blow it up. Oh, we heard about that guy. We heard about those people down on the other side of Japan that kind of put a nail in Daimajin's head. We're just gonna blow him up.
This movie seems determined to outdo the previous movie.
In many ways, it does feel like I'm gonna outdo the next one. I'm gonna outdo the previous film. However, there's a lot of great cutting. For example, when they blow up the Daimajin's head, they cut constantly from actual locale shots to a set shot, and it's really, really impressive, just the technical aspects of this film. I mean, granted, the movie's plot and characters are kind of lackluster, but I mean, the technical aspects of this film, from a filmmaker's point of view, is absolutely astonishing. Here's something, we already brought it up, and let's start off with what we like, let's start with what we like about the film. You and I can both agree that the visual effects are really good, but is there anything else that you found yourself liking about this film, Dylan, other than the visual effects?
I mean, for me, there are two characters that I like, because I also like the fat guy on the island, and for the same reason that you do, and also, like I said, I think the prince in this movie is so much less useless,
He's definitely a protagonist that you can kind of root for, but to me, he felt like too much of a goody two-shoe for me to really get behind him. Like, he didn't have any flaws whatsoever.
It's true. Like, I don't know. See, I'm not really blown away by any of the characters, but I did like him for that specific reason. It's like, at least this time we have a protagonist who can take care of business. He kicks some ass in this movie. But other than the visual effects, I mean...
Well, how about that music?
Of course, the music is fantastic.
Oh my god!
Again, it's an opera of Kobe.
To me, it's so funny because this is technically my least favorite one out of the trilogy, but it has my favorite score out of the trilogy. Oh my god, I love the use of Daimajin's theme. First off, the Daimajin theme, of course, remains the same and consistent in all three films. However, in this film, it's definitely the heaviest. The use of the brass instruments while using it, you just know shit's gonna get fucked up really quick every time you hear that theme. And another thing that I also like about this film is that Daimajin doesn't just show up at the end. On this one, he does little things to protect people throughout the entire thing.
That was an interesting difference. He wakes up pretty early on, actually, and spends quite a bit of time at the bottom of the lake.
He's just chilling there, drinking some, scotch.
Assumedly so. I mean, I wondered, wouldn't he be more useful, out of the lake? But apparently, it just was not his time.
It just wasn't his time. No, it took the princess crying for him to wake up. Not the tears of anybody else, but just her.
Right. Was that another plot thread that they recycled from the previous movie?
Yes, it was.
The princess has to cry.
The princess must cry and must offer her life, which is something that I think the next film goes away from and does it extremely well. But the princess must cry or offer her life to Daimajin to wake Daimajin up, and Daimajin, of course, wakes up and kicks some fucking ass. And boy...
He kicks all of the ass.
Kicks all the... Oh my god.
There's no ass left.
And you know, here's the thing that I absolutely love about it, and it comes out, everything about this action sequence, the final destruction sequence, fucking works. They fix all the problems I had with the sound effects in the first film. My god, it's just absolutely beautifully well done and well lit. And another thing that this has above, and first off, I think they do it more, I think the destruction scene in Daimajin Strikes Again, I'm always going to call it Wrath. But Daimajin Strikes Again is that Daimajin Strikes Again is shot in the snow, which is extremely difficult. But this one kind of steps up the ante from the last film by making it during a storm. And so you've got all this great atmospheric stuff going on with the sky, you've got rain, you've got wind. It looks absolutely phenomenal, and it blends perfectly from set to live action almost flawlessly. Like, I honestly think that this is, in my opinion, this beats Iji Tsuburaya on many levels, technically. And I will go on record as saying that. I think the visual effects for this film, I'm going to say it, they're better than War Gargantua's for me.
I definitely feel that it rivals all of Toho's best work. I don't know if I'm prepared to make the statement of calling it better, just because I prefer to sit on the fence.
Well, let me just say this right now. This film is in no way, shape, or form better than War of the Gargantuas at all.
Oh, no.
War of the Gargantuas is the far superior film.
There's just something about the way they shot these Daimajin movies that they just look fucking beautiful.
Oh my god.
I think we talked a little bit about this in the last video. I think one of the advantages is that Daimajin is a lot smaller than the average kaiju, so the models and things are more detailed.
Yeah, I think Daimajin's really only like 25 feet tall in this, and so of course because of that they have the advantage of they can make the sets a lot more detailed, they can make things heavier, and they can make things really have oomph behind it. While, of course, in a lot of Godzilla films, Godzilla's 164 feet tall at this time, and so they had to make the miniature smaller, therefore less detail. And the Heisei series, the Heisei Godzilla series, really ran into this trouble towards the end.
Yeah, the models in that went down in quality quite a bit, but yeah, I think these Daimajin movies benefit quite a bit from Daimajin being so small compared to what you would see in the average kaiju movie. And I know we had a discussion in the previous video about whether or not you can really even call it a kaiju movie, but that's neither here or there. And so because of that, and also just they're shot so well, the effects in this really equal a lot of the best stuff that you see from Toho. I'm trying to think of like what the best example is I can think of as far as like Toho that I can compare.
Well, the best example I can see of Toho special effects personally is from the 1961 film The Last War. However, there was no kaiju in that. It was a war movie.
True.
But
a kaiju example that is like this level of good. It's hard off the top of my head.
Right.
And I know I'm very biased towards Terror of Mechagodzilla, but I love the effects in that.
Right. But that wasn't that was Nakano, I think. Yeah, that was Nakano.
That's true. That is true.
Hence the explosions. But anyways, back to Daimajin. The Return to Daimajin, I'll tell you my favorite visual effects sequence in the film. And I want to know if it's the same for you as well. I'm pretty sure it is. But when Daimajin first comes back in his physical form, as Dillion said previously, he goes Old Testament on their asses.
Yes. And then he walks slowly to shore, and you're like, he is gonna fuck all of their shit.
He looks so angry. And then the music is just so foreboding and so dark and huge. I think this is one of Akira Ifukube's bigger scores, especially this attack sequence. I mean, as soon as you see the head of Daimajin rise from the lake, all of a sudden you hear the bomb, 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 and you know shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah.
Just by hearing that theme. And holy fucking shit, the lake splits, and I think like, I'm wondering, how did they do that?
I'm not sure. Do you know the answer to
I'm
that
not
question?
sure how they do that. I know Daimajin was filmed with a blue screen. But how did they get the water to do that?
Could they have done it in a similar fashion to, how did they do it in the Ten Commandments?
That's what I was thinking, and I'm not quite sure how they did it in the Ten Commandments, to be honest, but I have somewhat of a grasp on it. Actually, no, I'll be completely honest, I kind of really don't, but I know that they did it with, like, reverse photography and stuff like that.
I suppose I can see that.
And I don't know how they did this. And first off, Daimajin doesn't just split the lake, he fucking sinks the island.
Yes. It was amazing. I love the way another great moment that I love in this fantastic destruction sequence. I went on a lot about how he killed Seminosuke in the previous film. The way he kills the villain in this film, who I think's name is like Danjo or something.
Yeah, the only reason why I remember his name is because it reminded me of Django, and that is literally it. Danjo!
It's fantastic. He turns him into a flaming crucifix.
Well, yeah, you brought it up in the previous review, Dylan, where you said, for Daimajin, you said, Daimajin kills the antagonists by the way how they're going to kill the protagonists.
Yeah, in the previous film, he nailed Seminosuke to a piece of building that looked vaguely like a cross, which is what he was going to do to the prince. And in this film,
he was going to burn the princess.
Was going to burn the prisoners, the princess on a cross. And so he becomes a flaming cross. It's very. They use dramatic irony to their advantage.
Yeah, they do, and it really wasn't even Daimajin that wound up killing him, other than the flame thingy. It was really his own undoing that really screws this leader over. This antagonist
I don't know why they always think it's a good idea to climb up.
Me neither. It's clearly not a good idea. You know what? If you blow up a fucking statue god like Daimajin, you know shit's gonna happen. I mean, did they not learn from the previous clan that took over that one in the previous film? Did they not learn?
Obviously not.
Obviously not.
Do they know about that happening? Because this is obviously a different part of Japan. Apparently there are just Daimajin statues all over.
Yeah, there's just Daimajin statues everywhere. But my god, is this destruction sequence great. And I love the scene where he takes the gate, that they say, close the gate, and they're all running in there, panicking and shooting at him. And then all of a sudden he takes the gate, picks it up, and throws it down.
It's fantastic. I love the sequence where they try to kill him with dynamite.
Oh my god, yeah. First off, I love how that scene is shot. It reminds me of something straight out of like either Batman or like a later Godzilla film, where all of a sudden you see the dynamite explodes and everyone's like, yeah, we fucking did it, and then all of a sudden you just see smoke there, and slowly the smoke dissipates, and all you see is the outline of Daimajin standing there.
And like, they're fucked.
They're fucked.
There's just a great tense sequence where he's coming down the like alleyway or trench or whatever, and they're getting ready to detonate it, and you, the audience, know that it's not going to work, but there's still this like anticipation, like, oh shit, what's gonna happen, you know? And then they finally do it, and like you said, there's the moment, the token moment where you make the villain think they've won, and then just the smoke dissipates, and it's like, oh shit.
I know. And the other thing that I also admire about it is that I love how the villain goes up to the prince and says, you take one step forward and I will kill him, knowing full well what Daimajin wants. However, Daimajin just doesn't give a flying fuck, and just... I don't understand how his stare could get even more intense, but it did in that one sequence.
Yeah, didn't we in the previous film, in the previous review, describe him as Kaiju Michael Myers?
Yes.
It got worse.
Jesus Christ. I mean, just props to the suit actor, because it is his eyes.
Yeah.
That are in this. And what made this really good is that there are two sequences that I love in this film. And to be honest, it reminded me of something from like Darth Vader, to be honest. And that's the only other example I could think of, because that was an example where he like you can't see his facial expressions, but you kind of know what he's feeling and thinking. And one of them is, of course, that sequence where the villain goes up to the prince and says, if you take one step forward, I'll kill you. The pure look of anger on his face just intensifies in that sequence. And then the other one is, after the villain has been killed... Okay, I'm going to keep talking. After the villain is killed, ladies and gentlemen, because Dillion is BRB, Daimajin looks very, very sad. Or he doesn't look sad, but he looks very like, okay, I've done this, now I can return to my home. Because he turns back and looks at the princess, right? And when he does that, all of a sudden, it's a fantastically shot sequence in general. This is fantastically. I kept talking, Dylan. Shocker, right?
Good.
I'm not Bill. And he turns around and looks at the princess, and even though the facial expressions on the mask are still angry, the eyes are not. And because the eyes are not, it works. It makes you feel that Daimajin feels after this attack has been over. He's like, my mission is complete. I can now go back into the lake and become one with the lake.
It's similar to more people who make movies with suitimation, which obviously that's a diminishing market anyway. Need to find opportunities to show the actual actor's eyes, because it's interesting that you made a War of the Gargantuas comparison earlier. It's very similar to how in War of the Gargantuas you actually got to see the actor's eyes, and like they were able to emote, and it really makes a difference. It's fantastic.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I think War of the Gargantuas has the best characters in terms of kaiju, is because you can literally see the actors' eyes. You can see into their souls, and that's what makes it work. And that's what makes exactly.
Unfortunately, a lot of creature designs don't lend themselves to that sort of thing.
And I never understood why Eiji Tsuburaya never made Kong do that. I never understood that, but whatever.
Yeah, that seems like something you could get away with relatively easy compared to like
an ape or like a primate kind of being. Like, I know he did that in Half Human. Half Human, it's the actor's eyes. Whatever, we're getting way off track. Anyways, back to Return of Daimajin. Just a fantastic final act. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, the whole reason to watch this movie is the final act.
Is the final act.
Like
Yeah, seriously.
Movie, there were other reasons to watch. That was just the main attraction. This time it's like, yeah, you're really here for the final act. I mean, you'll be entertained. Don't get me wrong. It's an entertaining film until you get to the final act. It keeps your interest.
Yeah, I gotta say, some very interesting swordplay sequences in this film.
Yes, very well done. So, despite we've cited that it has some failings in terms of the story and not being as interesting as the last film and not being as original just because it's derivative, but at the same time, it does manage to keep your interest, and I gotta give them props for that.
Me too, I'll give them props for that. And I want to talk about the villain for a little bit. Because what made the villain in Daimajin so memorable was not the fact... The thing that I complained about in the first Daimajin film is that he didn't have a motive for taking over the clan. But what made him memorable was how much the actor was eating up the fact that he was the villain and enjoying the role because of how wonderfully over the top he was.
And murdering the hell out of that priest woman.
Yes. In this film, we get a reverse thing. It establishes right from the get-go why the villains need to take over these two clans, and that's because they are in almost like a desert area with no resources. They need to get resources basically to not only feed themselves, but feed their people. And so they invade these two peaceful clans, and the villain is not very interesting at all. So we finally get a reason why the villain is doing what he's doing, but the villain's not memorable at all. The only thing I really remember from this villain is A, getting crucified and burnt alive, and B, drinking while watching a bunch of basically old-time Japanese strippers dancing in front of him. And that's it.
Yeah, it's an interesting reverse problem where in the first movie the villain was all presence and no motive, and now we have a villain who's all motive and no presence.
I know.
And obviously I like Semenowski a lot better.
Obviously, yeah.
He's a lot more fun to watch. He's also more threatening. Like you look at him and you're like, I can understand being scared of that guy. Donjo just comes off as this slovenly, just fat guy.
Yeah, you see, I wasn't really scared of any of the villains, or I didn't feel threatened by any of the villains, quite frankly. The only thing that the villains had that was slightly threatening is that the villains had numbers, and that was really it. In the first Daimajin film, the villains were threatening. I mean, they were clearly enjoying their roles, and this is nothing. I mean,
they're paper thin. They're just there to be killed, basically.
Yeah, and that's really this film's downfall. However, you get really bored with them and just want to see the action sequences, and you watch the film anyways. The movie is only an hour and 18 minutes long. That is nearly 10 minutes shorter than the previous film, so...
And all three of these films are very short watches, aren't they?
Yeah, they are very, very short. And this one, of course, this is definitely the shortest out of the three.
Yeah, it's very breezy. I mean, if you want to just watch the action sequence at the end, I don't think anybody will blame you.
I really don't, because, the rest of the movie is not bad, but just so blasé that...
Yeah, there's nothing really over the top to criticize, and I'm having trouble criticizing it for that reason. But at the same time, there's nothing much to praise other than the fantastic special effects and great score.
Exactly. That's really it. There's one character that I liked, and of course that was the fat guard that loved the princess so much. And I legitimately liked this character because he always put his life on the line to save her. But that was it. I didn't even like the prince. I didn't like the princess, and the movie just falls flat in terms of its plot. I said it. The film just falls completely flat in terms of its plot. Is it bad? No. I can watch it on its own right. But my God, it is so fucking simple.
For the reasons we've stated, it's, it's got the best effects out of the three, and it's certainly the lightest, I would say. It's the one that I can picture just popping on sometime when you're bored. But, if you're looking for a little bit more out of your movie, then it definitely falls shorter than the other two.
Completely agree. You have anything else to say about this film?
I'm trying to think. There's got to be something else I can say. This video is coming out a lot shorter than the previous one.
Yeah, the first one is 40-something minutes. This one will only be 20. Almost 30. Yeah. There's not much to say here. It's just so blah.
Yeah.
In terms of the plot, and we've already hailed the visual effects. I've got nothing else.
One interesting thing, and I don't know if this is a thematic thing or if this is just a consequence of the writing. It's interesting to me that in the previous film, Daimajin is this mountain god. And in this film, he becomes more of a water-based deity, basically. And I don't know if there's any reasoning behind that. I don't know if there's any, statement to be made there. It's just an observation.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is either, because he kind of becomes a mountain god in the next film as well. So I don't really think... However, there is a progression that I forgot to mention. It goes in terms of the skies on each film. I said it in the first one, but I'll bring it up here again. In the first Daimajin film, the skies are red. In this film, the skies are green. And in Daimajin Strikes Again... Yeah,
it's beautiful in that one scene with the water parting with the green sky. It looks fantastic.
It looks so great. And then in Daimajin Strikes Again, the skies are blue. Like normal skies. And I think that's a great kind of... The coloration in this movie, that final action scene, is really good. I don't know if thematically that has anything to do with anything, but it is interesting because in the first Daimajin film, he starts going after the villagers, and it takes the girl, again, putting her life on the line to make him stop. And on this one, he just stops.
Oh, one good thing I can say in terms of the story of this film, since we've been ragging on the story for the most part, one good thing I can say about it is that because this isn't just this story isn't just the internal affairs of a single kingdom, but is instead this story that involves clans invading each other and warfare going on. The action and the consequences of the story do feel like they have a little bit of a greater scope. You know what I mean? It feels like it's on sort of a grander scale, but at the same time, the fact that the villains fall so flat and are so non-threatening kind of kills that a little bit. But I appreciate where they were trying to go in making the story more grandiose. You know what I mean? It's got more ambition behind it, I guess you could say.
I can kind of half agree with you, but a part of me doesn't, because this one clearly had a lot less extras than the previous Daimajin film, and that is definitely prominent in the takeover sequences, because...
I don't know if that's a budgetary thing.
It probably was.
I'm primarily talking about the writing, but yeah, that's another way that it kind of fails, is that there aren't that many actors on screen.
There isn't, and I mean, considering the fact that the other one had a lot of extras, especially in the outdoor sequences where they're showing building whatever the fuck they wanted to build for Samanosuke, but and this one there's not even that. There's like no villagers. There's nothing, and despite the fact that it feels technically bigger because of how they talk about it, it's really not. It's smaller actually in terms of its scale.
Yeah.
However, the smallest scale one is definitely the next one, which is ironically my favorite one. But we'll get to that in the next video.
It's interesting. It's like the movie talks a bigger game.
Talks a bigger game, but doesn't deliver.
Until the final act.
Right.
So yeah, I don't really know if there's anything much else to be said. I think we're kind of digging for things to say at this point.
Yeah, I have nothing else really to say here other than the only reason why I recommend this movie is for that final action sequence and how awesome the visual effects are.
I mean, it's a great watch. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say right now that I recommend buying the Blu-ray.
Me too. It looks glorious on that Blu-ray.
Yeah, the Trilogy pack Blu-ray that I think did Mill Creek put that out?
Yep.
Buy that.
They did something right.
And you'll get the two other films, which are better, and you'll also get this one, which is the most fun to watch, just for that ending.
Just for that fucking ending. What would you rank this film as?
You mean a score?
Yeah, score. Sorry.
I wish I could remember what I scored the last one for reference, but I usually score things out of 5, and I gotta say, I love the effects in this film so much, but looking at it from an objective angle, I can't score it highly purely on the basis of the effects. And so I guess, I don't know, I might regret this later. I might think maybe I should have gone like maybe one higher, but I'm gonna say like 2 out of 5, I guess.
Okay, well that's higher than me. I mean that's lower than me. Just funny. I gave Daimajin 3.5. I want to say 3.5 out of 4 stars because I heavily enjoyed it. This movie I'm going to give 2.5 out of 4 because I enjoy the final act. However, the first two are, to be honest, I think kind of boring. Not so much boring, but blasé, as I stated earlier. We've already stated why. So, yeah, that's it. All right.
So that was Return of Daimajin.
That was Return of Daimajin, everyone.
Next time we will talk about a film that I will have to rewatch before the review. Daimajin Strikes Again,
which
as it's also known, Wrath of Daimajin.
Which I will always refer to it as Wrath of Daimajin because that's the title I grew up with.
I liked both titles so much.
I know.
Wrath of Daimajin reminds me of Star Trek, and Daimajin Strikes Back reminds me of Star Wars.
I can't pick which title I like more. But yeah, please stay tuned for that. Like the Godzilla Saga on Facebook, like AN Productions on Facebook, and if you want to, just for shits and giggles, join the chaos that is Toho Nation.
Oh yes, where you can interact with people who may not be as insane as us, but possibly close, maybe.
Maybe. So, got anything you want to pimp out there, Dylan? Well, I say, Odaku and I got along quite well.
Oh yes, Adam is referencing the 10th episode / special thingy of Kaiju Spotlight, which I don't remember if I pimped on the previous video.
But he's pimping it now.
But it's out. You can go watch that and look out for more Kaiju Spotlight coming in the future, hopefully. And also you can check out all of the podcasting things that I'm a part of. Obviously the SOS podcast and also the spin-off DFOS. One of which happens every other week, and one of which happens every week. I will not tell you which one. And the fan fiction project Godzilla Odyssey that me and Bill have been working on, which is late. It's a tad bit of a hiatus at the moment, but is coming back soon.
Yeah, who's writing that one?
That one is actually going to be both of us. We're both writing pieces of it and then putting it together. The thing is, because Bill can't do all of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I heard that David was writing one and Andres was supposed to write one.
Oh no, they're not writing them. They helped. They were basically story consultants. David is actually was actually like the story consultant on this one because he knows his. Well, I almost spoiled it. The thing that we're crossing over with this time, he knows better than possibly anyone else in the SOS.
Yeah.
So we brought him on to help advise us.
It was just I saw them and I was like, I was the only one who's not writing one, so I was starting to think of. I've been working on one. Well, not really working on one, but I was writing one, or I just thought of one for Godzilla and Mass Effect. But then I said, no, I'm too balls deep into my Godzilla saga right now to do anything.
Indeed. But yeah, look out for the next issue of Godzilla Odyssey coming eventually.
It's coming.
Yes. So I do things
all right.
on occasion, and you
Cool.
can go watch those.
All right. So in the end, I guess this is Adam Noyce from Adam Noyce saying, "There is semen on Tom Cruise's back."
I do not want to know the context of that statement.